real happy to have my family here with me today, and I'd like for them to know that I am their grandfather. I was raised right on the Navajo reservation, so my grandchildren have the Navajo tribe blood in them. And I was raised on the Navajo reservation, being a sheep herder, and taming the horses and feeding the lambs. And we had about 1,000 sheep we had to take care of. And we also had a farm that I helped with my dad and the rest of the families. And I had some brothers that my father raised, and we all lived on the Navajo reservation. We lived in what is called a hogan. It's a hut round, and about 11 or 12 of us lived in it, crowded, and slept on the sheepskin. Our main food was mutton and tortillas and coffee. Even with our little kids, we raised on that. But my dad was a real industrious man. He had quite a few cattle and sheep and horses. So our main diet was also consisting of a few store food, but food that we bought from stores were very meager. But we raised corn, watermelons, and squash on dry farm. No water, no irrigation, and we lived in what you call a hogan. It's a shed, a hut with
made of mud,
cedar logs stacked up with dirt over it, so it kept us warm. And it's usually cool in the summer also. And there was no running water, so we had to haul the water in. Or wood, we had to haul the wood, chop the wood and haul them in. And we slept on the sheepskin right on the floor. No beds, no chairs, no table, no spoon to eat with. But we ate the food. We just surround a big pan of big stew or tortillas or whatever, and we used our own hands with eating mushy things like that, and chew the bones after mutton, and things of that nature. So our transportation was mainly horses and on foot, and we had wagon. We didn't have an automobile in those days, and nothing like that. And the Navajo tribe were uneducated, so there was nobody that had any writing about any family history. So my dad, my grandfather, those people do not have an English name. As a matter of fact, they don't even know where we were born or when we were born. It was all guesswork up to the time we were visited by the Bureau of Indian Affairs from the United States government, and they decided by a law that we must have our family histories, and every child should be given a name. So they did, and the school was in existence at that time. On the Navajo reservation, there were only few schools. They were administered and run by the United States government, Department of Interior, and they were all government schools. It was a boarding school, so we ate there, we slept there, and there were many runaways. And some of the families did not want their children in school, so there were few of us on the reservation. It's all only elementary school, and no high school. And the Navajo Nation got bigger and bigger, and they weren't a full citizen either. We could not vote, and we were forbidden to have anything like liquor on the reservation. Those were forbidden, not allowed on the reservation. Things of this sort. So we were not really a citizen of the American country, American government. But we could not vote, and we were called in the nation the ward of the government. In other words, the government run the school education, and also the roads and hospitals and medicines, and those type of things, all run administered by the government on the reservation. No one else was allowed to live on the reservation except in our case it was the Navajo Nation, Navajo Indians, and that type of thing. And the parents, even though as late as 1920s, the Navajo people, families, could not, they were not allowed to register their children in public school. They had to be in Indian, the Bureau of Indian Affairs boarding school is where we learned. We learned really the fundamental of 3 R's. That's all we knew. We didn't have any science like mathematics or chemistries, biologies, or things like that. We were not. We were not learning those things, mathematics, just the reading, writing, arithmetic. We were preparing us really to live on the reservation a better life, Transportation, hardly any Navajo Indians will own an automobile. All just wagon and horseback. We didn't have any running water in the home, so we had to melt the snow or rainwater and to bring them in. But with me, it gradually began to get better. I began to realize, that we could mingle with the white people, and that was some experience when first time I see a white man, and I was in a store. And the storekeeper was a white man, and I kept my eyes on him. And I was scared. I was ready to run. I thought he was going to come in and do something to me. But I found it. But when the storekeeper was running around selling items to the Navajo Indians, and I just stood there and watched him every move. And then he smiled, and at that point, I discovered that they were humans and smiled. So that was a great thing. But we still could not mingle with them. We traded the wool and goat hides, and sheepskins, and that's. We trade that to the trading post, and in return we bought clothes, food, bread, mainly flour to make bread, sugar, salt, and things like that. The very basic items so they were sold in the trading post. But any fresh fruits like apples and oranges were hardly available. But they began to get available later on. And then the school began to get bigger and bigger, and they had to take their children from the home and transfer them out off the reservation. There were other boarding schools, so-called, still um, the government run school in places. There's one in California, and in the big cities there were few. They transferred them there after they finished 6th grade. And the reservation school began to grow, and they added another grade. It was 8th grade and 12th grade, and before long there was a high schools. And the more educated ones, that they finished 12th grade or 8th grade, they were considered educated on the reservation. So they began to some bought automobile, and the wagons and horse-drawn wagons began to die out. The biggest change came along during World War II. There were so many young men enlisted in the armies and navies and marines, and the things began to really change. And when the war is over, we finally became a full citizen of the United States. And then we were given, a privilege to vote during the election, and we became a full-fledged citizen when we were entitled to everything that American citizens had. And then from the World War II, it began to grow, and there were many of the Navajos, Indians, began to have a college education, graduated from college. There was no, the government did not encourage college education. They had no money for them, but both those of us that went to school, college, on our own, and they were pioneers. I was among the pioneers, I guess. At the time I went to school, even after the war, there were very few Indians graduating from college. Now it's grown so much, and I've seen a lot of changes. Automobiles was changed. There was no televisions, no movies, no radios. There were things that they weren't there when I was born, but now there's so many things. And I hope my children would believe me that we really had what you might say, tough life. And when I was growing up, and things that what we now have is unimaginable right now. Some of the grandkids, we tell them about my life during the early days, and they hardly believe me. They'll say, "Grandpa, you're lying," But it is really true. There was no taking a shower or taking a bath at that time was non-existent. Our hairs was all uncombed. We had hair lices in our hairs, and barefooted and running around. We killed the rabbits and prairie dogs and things like that for our food. And they traded the Navajos weave rugs, beautiful rugs with nice design on them, and they traded to the trading posts. That's why they're called the stores on the reservation trading posts, because they traded things like rugs and things like wool and hides and coyote skins and things like that. And that's the way they got the bread, and they got the sometimes they would buy something sweet like canned tomatoes and oranges. They began to come into the stores, and then there was something, it's good broth, and we would divide it up among the children, and we ate it. Like if they would pay, if they buy maybe a couple of oranges, and we would cut it up in juice, make a juice in the water, put some sugar in it, and that was our juice, our sweet juice. Well, I could tell more, but I think.
Now, when did
I
you?
really appreciate my children, my grandchildren. They're all well and enjoying life. Some things that I did not have.
When did you leave the reservation and go away to school to BYU?
In 1939, I graduated from a boarding school in Albuquerque Indian School. It was Indian school. And there was hardly anyone going on to school. None of my classmates and none of them in that group. So I decided I want to try college because there were a couple of others that went into college from that school and made it. And I thought I'd try it. So I went to New Mexico Highlands University in Las Vegas, New Mexico. I went there just to try, just to see what they would say. You know, I walked up there to register, and a missionary took me there, and they talked to the dean of students, and she said, "Well, we'll give you a test and see if you can do the college work." So they gave me a special test. It was just a written test, that's all it was. It just tell about anything, how your grammar is and so forth. I passed it and then I registered. But I worked real hard day and night and earning extra money to go to school. Fortunately, the second year in college, in 1941-42, the war broke out, World War II. That came to my rescue. And I was in debt to the college. So when I enlisted, I started paying back the tuitions and things that I owed. And after the war was over, I was discharged in 1946. And I went back to the same college. And I really sailed through because of the GI Bill. And the government was giving me a lot of money, so I had money. And I learned more and experienced outside the reservation that really helped me. And the college wasn't too bad. It wasn't too hard after that, because I already been among the non-Indians, served with them in war. Learned a lot. I learned more during the war as a member of the Navy, and that helped me. College work was much easier, and so I got my diploma. And even though I taught school in between, and then I re-enlisted and stayed in the Navy for another 27 years and retired in 1970. And then I worked again in the government, so I retired again, and things were better.
What advice would you give your great-grandchildren?
I would advise them to learn all they can. Education, go to school, study, hard work, should work, and not be lazy, but get a good education and try the best you can. Be good to the people, and I would also, what really helped me is to be a church member. You know, learn a lot about life, and the spiritual blessings that you get. I think that really helped me also, and make me a better person, dealing with the people, um, you'd have more concern, more compassion for your fellow citizens, and you'll know more about the people and how to deal with them, and be able to live not just among your tribes, but with all every people anywhere in every culture. And I think education will give you that. Will give you that life, that kind of life, being able to live anywhere with in any country,
How
not among, not just a reservation, but anywhere. And I really appreciate that I can live anywhere in the world. Don't have to be on the reservation.
how did how did the church come to you or to your family?
I mean, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day
Yes.
Saints. Yes. Well, my son, Dennis, Dr. Little, I was like Joseph Smith. I was going from church to church, different ones, and I wanted to know which is the best church out there. But they're all the same. And he was baptized in high school, and then I began to think, what kind of a church is that Mormon church anyway? It doesn't sound like it's a Lord's church. But I began to do some research, and I bought the book on it, written by one of the great prophets. And I read it, and there's some miracle things happen that really make me decide. On the ship, I was still in the Navy, on the aircraft carrier in the Navy. And there was a fellow that, his name was Barber. He got me, I got together with him in our dining room, petty officers' dining room. And I didn't know him at all before. As a matter of fact, I didn't really like him. But I got my coffee and sat down with him, and we started talking about religion. And he told me all about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the prophets and the temples and the general authorities, and what they really believe, what they don't do, what they do. And when we got through, I scratched my head and said, "Hey, that sounds more like following the scriptures." Of course, by that time I read the Holy Bible all the way through, and the main thing that really helped me to become a member, I guess, is the prophet and the temple work, and the church, the leadership, the prophet and the apostles. It's in the scriptures, but all these churches don't have it. And I thought, well, where are they? What happened? And here it was in the church. So that, and my son really is the one that got me in. He doesn't know it, but because he joined the church and he was baptized, and then I began to do some research and find out more about it, and it turned out that it's real funny though. I decided to be baptized, my wife then was agreed. She didn't want to join the church either. So one day she said, "I guess you want to join the church, the Mormon church." So I said, "Yes, very much." I said, "Okay, then I'll be baptized with you." Fine. So I was working for the government and agency superintendent, and we had a meeting that morning. Everybody was drinking coffee. I was drinking coffee. I love coffee. I never going to stop it. So I told my family, I said, I'm going to be baptized in the Mormon church, but this is one fella here that's not going to. He's going to be drinking coffee Mormon because Mormons don't drink coffee. I'm going to drink coffee. That's one thing I'm not going to stop. So the meeting stopped and I went back to my office and I was sitting there and also I got sick and from coffee. That's never happened before. I didn't drink coffee. Maybe I don't know how many cups a day, but this time I got sick. And I just got sick, that's all, and I did not even want to smell. I could smell that when I go near coffee someplace, I smell it. I smell awful. So, and I just didn't like the coffee, and then from that time on to this day, I'm that way. I didn't make it up. I think the people they say that I made it up, but it's not. It's not. I didn't make it up. So I quit coffee, and it made me sick. And I guess the Lord says, He said, I guess that's what you think. So, I got news for you. And just some things like that helped me all along since I joined the Navy. It's a miracle of things that you would never expect. So I know that the church is true, that we have a prophet and that we have apostles, we have the general authorities, the quorum of the 70s, missionaries, and we have the word of wisdoms. Those really added up to help me stay in the church.
And what were some of the positions you served in?
That's another one. I was baptized on Saturday in Page, Arizona. And my branch was in Chinle, Arizona. It's about almost 100 miles away. And I went back there the day after I was baptized. I walked into the branch on Sunday morning. And the branch president was waiting for me there. As soon as I came through the foyer door, he pointed his finger at me and says, "You're going to be the clerk, ward clerk, from this minute on. You'll take care of the records and the money too, and you'll do that right now. That's your calling." So the day after I was baptized, I got a calling. That's very rarely too, and then the Sunday school counselor, and then in the ranch where we were, on Navajo reservation at Chinle, Arizona. We were in the mission in the district. They call it district instead of a ward. Instead of a stake. And I became a counselor in the state. Although from then on I was again Sunday school presidency, and then the priesthood presidency. Those were my beginning callings. And then when I came back to Tuba City, and all of us again, I walked into a ward, and There was